Hey guys, welcome back. Today I've got something very interesting to show you guys. You're probably wondering why I've got these big glasses on. They're my goggles and they're for safety. I decided to make some soap. If you follow me on Instagram up there, you probably already know by now that I make my own soap, and that's just because since I had a baby, some of you probably know that I've been crazy about natural things. You know, there's so much cancer and all sorts of diseases everywhere, and I strongly believe that it's the things that we use and the things that we put on our bodies and the things we obviously eat. But more importantly right now, the things we use on our bodies, like I just couldn't find a way to kind of filter it and know what was safe or what isn't safe. And a lot of companies will come and market to us things that they say are probably safe, but you know, how can I know if the ingredients are things I don't understand? And so I decided to learn how to make my own soap, and it turns out that soap is soap. There's nothing special about it. You know, you can use special oils. It's just great to know what you're using. There's just so many advantages to making your own soap that I just had to learn to make my own soap. And so I usually use 3 basic ingredients, 3 oils that I absolutely love, and that's because I've done all of my research to ensure that I know and understand the oils that I use. I use olive oil for conditioning. I use coconut oil because it just helps the soap with its cleansing properties. It helps the soap to lather a lot more. And then I use shea butter because who doesn't even know? You know shea butter. Shea butter is like gold. It's like the golden oil, and it's the best. It's non-comedogenic, meaning that it does not clog your pores, and it's just all around great. And so the soaps that I make are actually really good to use on face and body. And I even use them for my baby as well, because I went a step further to learn how I could make recipes that would be baby friendly, so recipes that wouldn't like be hurtful to any member of my family. I'm going to make this video very detailed because I want anybody who watches this video to be able to learn from it and be able to make their own soap from this video. Now in soap making, you use 2 basic ingredients, and that's the oils and your alkali, yeah. And the alkali is, in this case, sodium hydroxide, and it's also known as lye or caustic soda. Or sodium hydroxide is really like, I wouldn't say it's dangerous, but it's something to be respected. You shouldn't be afraid of it, but you should respect it. And that's why you have to wear goggles and all these safety equipment, because you really must take precautions. I've got my gloves. I'm going to be wearing gloves. Got my goggles, and I'm wearing long sleeves as well, because I don't want it getting on my skin. And then also my baby is not with me, so you should have no pets or children around you. Ideally, I should also have a mask on, because when you're making this, some fumes will come off, and yeah, you shouldn't inhale that. So I'm going to hold my breath at that point because I know that I don't have a mask on. I will also be using my vent to make sure that the vent is on and it takes all of that fumes away. You can go outside. If you don't have a vent, you can go outside of your house to do that part of the process. Yeah, so yeah, the oils and the alkali have to combine to form soap, and that is a process known as saponification. And I'm letting you guys know that because that is the key right there in soap making. And once everything is saponified, then you have soap, and it's no longer dangerous, and it can be used on the skin. It's important to check the pH level of your soap after you've made it, before you use it, to ensure that it is safe to use on your skin, because if it's too alkaline, it's going to burn. You know, you find that you buy some handmade soaps and they burn your skin. Yeah, that's even one of the main reasons I got into making mine, because I would use some other handmade soaps and they would burn my skin, and I would just wonder, but you said it's handmade. It has only shea butter, it has only coconut oil. How come it's burning my skin? Well, that's because sometimes the saponification process doesn't happen correctly. They probably don't mix it properly, or they don't use the right measurements to ensure that each molecule of fats, the fatty acids, react to each molecule of the alkaline, that's the sodium hydroxide, to form its soap. And when that doesn't happen, or when that happens, I don't even know, that's when you get a soap that can burn. You really must understand soap making before you proceed to making soap. I did all of my research. I learned it so much, like you can tell, I literally learned it like a book before I attempted to make my own soap. And from the very first soap I made until now, I have not gotten one wrong. The only thing I've done that I didn't quite like was the first batch I made, I used oat, and I poured my oat directly into it without even doing anything to the oat. And it was just a very really exfoliating soap, and that's the only error, and that's not a big deal really, because I did enjoy using the soap even though it was quite exfoliating. I always would use a loofah anyway, so I didn't feel it. So let's get on with it after this really long introduction. So here you can see I've got my pictures, I've got my soap mold, I've got my lye. I'm going to link down everything I've used, by the way, in the description box if you want to use anything from, if you want to use any of the products I've used. My olive oil, shea butter, coconut oil. This is oats that I blended and sieved, and so it's a bit smoother. I don't have the time to be looking for colloidal oatmeal. I feel like that is just too diva-ish. I just do mine. And then some honey, because I'm making honey and oatmeal soap. And then this is distilled water. The reason why I use distilled water is because you don't want mineral water from your tap, and you don't want, you know, stuff, minerals in the water mixing with anything. I don't want anything mixing with the chemicals. Anywho, I also have a weighing scale because your measurements have to be exact. I have a spatula, I have a kitchen towel that I'll just use to wipe down any mess, and I have my gloves. So I'm going to be making half a pound of soap. I'm going to be measuring out my oils now.
So as you'll see, I like to start off by measuring my oils first, followed by the water, and then the caustic soda will be the last thing I'll measure, since obviously it's the one that needs the most caution.
Measured out my lye, and I measured out my water, the amount of water I'll use. I'll be linking everything down below, every measurement, so if you want to make it for yourself, you can always look down in the description box, and if you use the exact measurements I've used, you're going to get your soap.
And then I'll gently mix the lye into the water. Please pay attention to this because you must never do it the other way around. You should always put the lye into the water and never the other way around. Lye goes into water. Then you mix it properly until it dissolves completely. Then I will go ahead and use the hot solution because it does produce heat, and I will pour that into my shea butter to melt the shea butter. Once the shea butter is melted, I'll then add the rest of my oils to the mixture and then mix in properly. Then I will use an immersion blender to blend the mixture properly before I go on to add my oats and my honey. And I apologize, my camera was out of focus here because I was wearing goggles. I really couldn't even see that it just wasn't in focus. But yeah, I apologize. The soap started to trace really quickly here because it's a very small batch, and so everything happened really fast before my eyes. But I still had to add my oats and honey, and so I still kept on mixing, and so it really got pretty thick. So as you can see, it did form a really thick trace, which really isn't a problem. You want your trace to be a little lighter than this, but this is still fine if it comes out thick. It's simply because I made a really small batch, and yeah. Next, you pour your soap into a soap mold, cover it with a cling film or plastic wrap for 24 hours, and then after 24 hours you can then bring it out to cure. And then I had to distribute it evenly here to avoid air pockets, especially since it's really thick. And yeah, so you could just use a skewer or anything you have to just kind of push it around like I did there. Ideally, you shouldn't need to do this if your trace is not too thick, but because my trace turned out thick, I had to do this. So one major question I always ask, and please ignore my nails, is how to wash soap tools. And what I usually do is the ones that have, I'm not going to touch it because they're still quite caustic. So the ones that I used for the lye, and I believe I used this one and this one, I'm going to spray some vinegar because that is going to neutralize it. And then I will leave these ones that I used for the soap for a few days until they turn to soap. So I'm going to leave them for about 2 or 3 days until they turn to soap, and then I'll just wash it off. And yeah, that's just how you take care of the tools. Nothing major. So here's our soap after 24 hours. See, at this point I don't need to wear gloves because this saponification process has occurred, but it's still not ready to be used. You have to then leave this to cure for see, because it was quite thick, it didn't quite form, but anyway, that's not still too bad. Anyways, you're gonna have to leave this to cure for about 6 to 9 weeks. I like to leave it for a minimum of 6 weeks, because if you use it at this state, it's still quite soft, and using it now, it's really just going to melt in the shower or bath or whatever. So it's just best to leave it for 6 to 9 weeks to cure and get harder. But yeah, that's our soap.
I'm going to show you another one that I made a few weeks ago that's already been cured, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. This one, there are lots of all these air bubbles, and I think it's just because the trace was pretty thick before I put it in, so it still left some air bubbles, which I don't quite like. This is the first time this is even happening to me, and I think it's because I made a really small batch. I usually would make about 1 pound, but this was just half a pound, so 4 bars, as you can see. And so it just, you know, was a bit I don't know, I found it a bit harder. Plus, to me, it was a bit of a waste of time to make only 4 bars with all the effort. But I didn't have enough lye, so I just had to make do with what I had. But yeah, this is how to make soap. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment below for me and I will answer your questions. Have a great day, everybody.